Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bashir Fancy. I'm the President and CEO at BIZTEK, which is Business and Technology Professional Association of Canada. We are very fortunate. We have got a very exciting guest today, in Bill Henneberry. He's got a pretty solid record, and he will tell you a lot more. I've got his background, which he's done with Bell. He's built all sorts of data centers, helped Rogers, helped worked in US, worked with different companies, and he understands the broader picture, having done that himself, which I think is very valuable. And why this very valuable, the type of times we're now dealing with, and the type of solutions we have to come up with, this is exactly the type of thinking and experience and knowledge we're going to need. So welcome, Bill, this morning. I really appreciate the fact that you're here. Maybe you can add to the background, then I can ask you a couple of questions.
Okay, thank you, Bashir. Yeah, I've been around the block in the data center world for many years on different areas. My background is not just design, build, construction. I do operations. I understand the real estate side of things, where site selection for data centers is very important. So I've gone down and looked at over 1,000 properties and various sites over the years, and done my assessments for data centers and try to help people. The big part I do is my consulting. I try to help people because it's tough to understand whether you should own a data center or outsource your data center, right? So a lot of clients come to me with those kind of questions, but that's my background.
Fantastic. And you actually said a couple of things that's just perfect. We have a lot of data centers in Canada, Americans, some Canadian, and they actually opened some big risks for Canadian companies. And why don't you expand on what are the advantages? Why would you do it here? And you may get perhaps cost advantage with some of the American companies here, but it's not necessarily the smartest thing, depending on what there is. Why don't you expand, since you've done all that?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I mean, Canadian owned is always better in my mind, and understanding the local communities, right? So when you're building a data center, you don't just go in there and do what you normally do. You have to understand the local trades, the local codes, the authorities, things like that. So a lot of our US friends, and I've done a lot of work for these guys, come up here and they just kind of lay it down. Here's my plan, and make it work. And it doesn't always work to plan. So understanding that key component is understanding the marketplace here, and how to deal within that marketplace with the construction trades and the various areas there. But the big part about Canada is understanding the security aspect of that too. A lot of Canadian customers want to keep their data in Canada. And if you're a US owned company in Canada, you can still have that data go across the border, which a lot of people don't understand how that could happen, but it does happen, from time to time.
Well, that's actually an interesting point you bring up, because Amazon may have an Amazon data center here, but they are an American company. And under the rules, US can still, under Patriot and all that, still demand to see the data, right? And they don't need permission from the end card or end user, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's still wide open for interpretation, but a lot of it is, if it's US owned, I mean, they may have a Canadian entity. It all depends on how it's really set up. So you really have to understand what contract you're signing, because the terms and conditions are always in the details, right? So
right, absolutely. You're signing with a Canadian-based company, Canadian entity reporting here, all different business. That's absolutely right. That brings a very interesting thing, because we tend to have a lot of the data centers here in downtown or just surrounding. So the data centers don't necessarily have to be here. If with the right infrastructure, networks, and so forth available, you could put it outside to take advantage of cheaper costs, land, and so forth. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's happening more and more. But you got to really understand, there's a lot of, in Ontario alone, you have to have the right location. So it's still being in the downtown core is important for the financial market and that whole presence. I get that. There's nothing available today down there now. It's all been picked over and built up, and it's probably 10 times more expensive to do business in downtown core versus say Markham or just on the outskirts of the GTA, right? So a lot of people are now looking for that space and power in those locations. But if you can't go out to the rural areas too much because you're not going to get the power you need to run a data center, right? So it's not just having that cheaper land and you still have to do that power, and that connectivity is very, very important. So Markham area, even in Barrie now, they've got data centers up there because they built that connectivity up that far, right? So a lot of the big players have kind of gone up there for just diversity as well. It's not just to be close to the core, but having that diversity for disaster recovery is a key role to have it on the outskirts. But for me to go build in Belleville tomorrow, it wouldn't make sense if you know what I mean, if you understand the Canadian landscape. So
right. But doesn't that help? You highlighted one of the challenge there of power and the infrastructure not being available properly. But doesn't that actually beg a question? Why is the government not, or they should be actually looking? Because if we are looking for immigration and all that to come in here to help us do that, we should be spending money to create that roadmap with infrastructure so that people would want to come there and locate there, invest money, because that's going to be important, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a new trend that's coming now, and you'll hear a little bit more about it, and it's probably a whole other topic that we can get into. Right. It's called smart cities, right? So I am working on an initiative right now with a lot of the municipalities for that. But it's going to take time, right? It's not going to happen overnight because the infrastructure is not completely out there, and it takes time and money to do that. And as we all know, I know the government more recently has just allocated more fiber money to get that fiber out there, but it's still going to take the time. And power is another animal. I still think they need to do a better job on the power side of things, and I think that's even I think just the incentive program in the States, US, they get a lot of incentive programs around the tax credits, you name it, from the power incentives as well, because data centers are very, very expensive. But the edge data centers are going to be a smaller version of the bigger data centers, and that is coming.
That's a very interesting point you've gone to, and you're right. The smart cities is a whole big thing itself. Although COVID-19 has created a challenge where people are actually gravitating to that without any planning, right? Because people are working from home and they're wondering, why the heck do I need to be downtown? And I can do the stuff in my house. Now, that's when they start to find out, I don't have the network connectivity. And it's interesting. I saw the government's going to put a lot of money into fiber, and then wondering, as we talk there's a debate on that issue. There's a lot more satellite power now available with lower orbiting stuff that can actually provide pretty powerful communication. I don't know why we have not looked at, but that's a whole thing that should be examined in itself. You're absolutely right. You talked about smart cities, and that's right. For any of this thing to happen, of course, there'll be planning required, but they need to get going with that now, because we're now in an area where things are happening outside of our planning that I don't think anybody planned for COVID-19. And now organizations are having to have people working from home, which will create all sorts of even security problems. But my question was that, doesn't this not call for more collaboration in the companies, and because we are tussling with each other, but isn't this what could really help here?
Yeah, definitely. It's about the capital cost to do it as well. So, some of these companies, you're not going to build it and they will come, right? That model is gone by the wayside because the consumers are too smart now. They know what they want. They'll pay for it when it's there,
right.
But not until, right? So, getting those old days of getting a contract and then having 3 years to go build it are gone.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know what I mean? The planning, the companies used to plan for 5 to 10 years out. That doesn't happen. It's a 6-month process now, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
but to your point, the collaboration is something that it's never easy, right? So because it takes time, someone's got to invest the time, not just one or two companies. It's multiple companies that have to come together, and obviously the government could direct that traffic, if you know what I mean. So that's something that could happen down the road under the right direction, right?
That is exactly, you touched, the point was very good, because that's exactly what I'm thinking. The business leaders, government, federal, provincial, business and technology leaders coming together saying, let's create, because we've outsourced, for example, customer service, and I would like to hear your views on, we've outsourced customer service to different countries. And we didn't do it because they were very secure. We did it because of the cost was cheaper, right?
Right.
Now, if we're going to combat this, the government will have to play here through tax incentives that you're talking about, creating incentives so you don't tax. Then if I'm going to invest, okay, and I'm making a little bit of money, but I'm creating jobs, don't tax me, give tax holiday to this type of business, especially if they're relocating and creating jobs here, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean that's the incentives are there today to a certain degree. They talk about the shred credits and things like that to kind of do that, but that's more based on software companies, that type of thing. Hardware companies or having that critical elements to go and secure land and develop that thing. That money is a different animal altogether. So that isn't something that will happen anytime soon, I don't think, because it's a different animal to go down. But the data center side, I think, with the way everything's being outsourced, I think what has to happen is there's got to be a process to start that. And I know in 2021, the smart cities, groups that are going to take on this new role, there's something like 300 or 400 units that have to be deployed. That's going to take a 3-year process, but that is still something that is something in the works. It's not a slam dunk.
So, yeah, the reason I'm saying this is because federal government owns a tremendous amount of land.
Right.
And the land is useless, it's worth zero if it's not being used. But it could be put to good use by the integrating this with the smart cities thinking, saying, hey, if we're going to do this, how about creating the data center, building a smart city around it? Because, this COVID-19 has happened, but I would not put my bet that it's just one-time thing. We're going to be dealing with this for a long time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's something that's not going to go away. And then obviously working from home, as we all experience this, we don't know what that's doing on the system side of it and the bandwidth side of it. Yes. But it is, when you have to go, just think of this as a simple, analogy, is I'm sitting at home and I'm doing all the same files and data, but I'm now sending that back to my office. And then someone's looking at it, reviewing it, and it's duplicated probably 3 or 4 times there before it actually hits a data center, if you know what I mean. So yep. There's more cost of doing that business too as well. And I don't think anybody has looked at those numbers yet because they're just starting to understand them this year.
Right.
But that's where things are going to get more expensive.
So. Which is actually very interesting. You touched on something I hadn't, I've looked at it from a different symbol. We don't look at where the data enters the system, the entire data flow, who touches, why they touch it, because we've got so much duplication today without this now adding to it, right? That if we were to streamline a lot of those things, you will remember this, Bill, I'm looking for my old days and age. People, because technology guys would not deliver stuff in time, or they wanted something very quick, marketing is up to the IT guys, and IT guys, well, that's going to take me 6 months, and I got 40 things. What do you want me to drop to do it? And they would get very upset, and they go do it themselves. So they would, in the old software, you create user exits, boom, data on site, and now you do things. But when we were doing a conversion, even at ACAN, we had a nightmare of a problem because there were applications and processes that were attached to it that we never had a clue. There was no document because people had built here, there, and everywhere, and you change this and something else stops over there because it was a spaghetti type programming, right, kind of thing, because people had made changes all over the place. And I think in the corporate world, because you hear the use of the word legacy system so often that, only if we had been charging $1 for every time they used that term, we would have all met multi millions. But nobody's dealing with it. They keep talking about the legacy system, and what you're talking about is a chance to turn on, create that type of data center you're talking about with the government and all these other partners, and then start to migrate little at a time to a cleaner app that deals with today's needs and tomorrow's, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what the cloud is kind of doing that too. It's forcing people to relook at these old systems, and then, because you can't go to the cloud if it's a legacy system. It has to now, the software's got to work in a different environment. So that has to be tested ahead of time. So a lot of people are looking at that and understanding that. And, I worked in the IT departments and for various companies and research and development and things like that. But the data classification is the very first thing you have to do, right? So that's very, very important. And that'll save you as a corporation millions and millions of dollars a year if you do classification properly. But it takes a discipline, and back to your point of, okay, things just get done and we don't know how it got done, but now it's there and I don't know how to reinvent that, right? So that's it. But from the data center side, from an infrastructure side, we don't care. We can build this net new data center, and you can put your data there and in different formats, but it's everybody's got their own flavor of the week, and it's changing, every 6 months it's something different, right? So with VMware and Veeam and all these new software programs out there, it's easier to do different things. But the legacy stuff is still there because no one knows how to fix it or how to even move it over to the next application, right?
Is also the will to do it is not there either. You're right. Probably because of the fact that they're saying, I don't know where the hell to start. Yeah. And you almost, when I look back into those days when I was doing it, you almost need to look at it and go, okay, let me get the building blocks and migrate one at a time, because it's almost like what we call modular programs. So you can bring that in and start to build. But here's the interesting thing, something else you said, because of the cloud computing, right? I'm assuming you are talking about Canadian cloud so that the data stays here under our oversight, not because cloud kind of it's been changing, but cloud was really another word for outsourcing, right? Nobody wanted to call it outsourcing, so we started calling it cloud. And nobody knows. I mean, if I asked my wife, where's this data? I can't see it. And she said, well, it's on the Apple phones in the cloud. I said, what cloud? Because I've got a cloud right here. You can't see, but I actually have two or three servers, right? But I take them offline. When there's no data being accessed by me, I take the stuff from here, I will update it and gone offline. And when I do that, I'm offline also. So that effectively nobody's got access to that. But what she meant was it's sitting with Apple. And I go, hang on. It's not, the data is not in Canada. It could be in India, it could be in Philippines, it could be wherever. We don't know. And that also creates its own problem. I mean, it's not a coincidence that we get a call from duct cleaning and CRA threatening if you don't pay the 5 people on their way to arrest you. So give me iTunes card. Somebody's got this information, right?
Right.
Because we've outsourced it and we don't know. I've not seen, as I said, I used to negotiate this and I used to turn and tell people, we don't go and negotiate because they're very secure. We negotiate with them for price. And that brings a different. So if you're talking about cloud, and it would be fantastic to do that, to create a Canadian cloud, so Canadian government would say, okay, we've got all sorts of these security challenges that we talked about, which is absolutely true. So we could actually narrow this down by creating a Canadian cloud, right, in few places. So not only they've got a hot backup site within Canada, right, different places, but you could take the guys that are mature to there first, while you then help the guys like banks, because banks are kind of big victims of legacy systems. But as I said, I don't think they've done anything to correct that. Maybe it's not because they don't want to correct it, but like you said, they don't know where to start. But they have to start because they're going to get done in by the one of the things we're going to cover in this January stuff that we'll announce soon is the future of banking. You saw this announcement from Nigeria a couple of days ago that they've started this microfinance bank, and they're doing everything there. They're going after exactly the same guys that the big banks here are operating. So initially, people thought it was just mobile payments and mobile wallets. And I've been telling them for a long time, I used to manage operations bank, that no, they are after this other area. And if they can bring the cost down, and they can, it's going to be problematic for the people here. Now, the only way you then defend it is through the monopolies and all that. So isn't having a Canadian cloud bring a lot more advantages if they were to do that?
Yeah, I mean, there is some Canadian cloud companies here, and they're managed by what we call a managed service provider. So that's meaning that you've got an IT company basically that is renting space in a data center,
right,
as a lease. They don't own the data center 9 times out of 10,
right,
and they build basically a public and a closed cloud perspective, depending on the client's needs and requirements. Usually, most clients will want a hybrid solution. So you don't just want everything up in the public cloud. You want to have a private cloud as well. But the big guys are eating their lunch because they can't. The smaller guys can't compete with the Amazons, the Googles of the world to a certain degree, right?
Right.
And people don't. It's all about price.
Right.
Consumers think they're smarter than everybody. Not to be negative, but they think they can. It's all about just making it cheap and fitting into my budget, and it's a one-time event. It's not a program. They don't think of that as building that into your real budget and understanding the risks with that budget. But I think that, back to your point, there's nothing like a big Canadian cloud company that can compete with the US right now.
Right. That's a very important point you just made, because I think that's where the public-private partnership will have to kick in with the incentives and all that to do that. Otherwise, I think there's companies like Fuse Point and a few other people here who do things in Canada. But you're absolutely right. And I think given that, and so this will play a quite a big role in the future, and it will require planning, but it's going to require, if they're doing $1.7 billion for laying the fiber, as I said, good thing that somebody's thinking like that, but if I was them, I would take a step back and say, hang on, is that the smart way of, they can't fix, and I'm talking about one of the telecoms, can't fix 1-2 yards of the cable that's been cut for 6 years here.
Yeah.
And it requires permission from municipalities and this one and that one to do things, and they didn't bother doing it. They lost the whole street to that particular telecom company. And they're going to lay the fiber on 1.7 billion. Well, 1.7 billion probably going to become 6.7 billion by the time you've done it, because we have never seen this project come under budget or under in time. So right. What is the benefit they're going to get if the likes of Elon Musk or whatever start to do those wonderful satellite things? So I think they need to take a step back and really think this through, because it looks fantastic on paper, beautiful announcement, wonderful. Drill down, because like you said, devil is in the details. How exactly is the thing going to work?
Right.
And so are there other better options? This goes to our, and I'd like you to, because you have alluded to a couple of things about data centers, that isn't part of the problem our thinking that we don't take risks, that we are too conservative here and therefore we don't do that. Isn't that, you want to speak to that? From a data center point?
We are. I mean, I'm a doer myself. I'm a bit of a risk taker, because you have to be in my business. I feel, right. So I'm that build it and it will come kind of guy to a certain degree, right. But and I understand the business case side. That's probably my nature. I do understand the business aspect of it, and I want to make money to spend money, right. So there's always that. There's always a two sides to that, but I think that the big key is back to what you were saying, is don't just lay fiber out there, willy-nilly, in the sense that, it's just we think that's what they need. You know what I mean? And again, the other thing is you got to have that end game. So it's not just okay having the fiber there. What's it connected to? How is it going to work? How are you selling it? How are you revenue sharing with the municipalities, or how are you operating it, right? And if it's all done in a vacuum, these projects will fail. I
Correct.
mean, I've seen that more and more. I mean, there's a lot of. I worked for Sun Microsystems, and it was probably my as a consultant for Sun Microsystems in Canada, big U.S. firm, obviously,
Right.
and
Right.
they spent $2.4 billion a year on R&D, and I was part of that team on the data center side, and I learned a lot. I mean, a lot of the products were half baked, right? But I mean, what they did do was amazing. If you could take that and bake that product with third parties and working with different people to make that work, taking that extra mile, and that was part of my job, is to go find those partners, channel partners, to bake that solution. And 9 times out of 10, we had an amazing product there. That it was before its time. I mean, that's what you really got to kind of look at. And we were looking at one time I was doing this. It was like an incubator type of a solution where, everybody's testing all the new products out there, right? But they're doing it individually. So you got one of the banks doing it over there, another bank over there, the government doing it over there, a small, medium business guy doing it over there. Why didn't they just share resources, put them in the same think tank and just share on, and everybody put in a bit of pot of money, based on, kind of a charity, not a charity, but you know what I mean? A nonprofit organization.
No problem.
Yeah. And then everybody reap the rewards across the board where you're gonna share in that resource. And it never really, we tried to do it, but we couldn't get everybody to sign off because not everybody's got a compelling event at the same time. That's the problem.
And by the way, I am very familiar with one of the things, maybe what you're referring to, because I knew the representative from one of the companies on there, and we had got in the middle of all this because we were invited to speak. And you're right, they would agree to things in the meeting, but nobody had any intent of doing anything. They were just showing up at the meeting to talk about it. But that means and I look at the GTA, it's one of the best airports in the world, but it's not government owned. It's not owned by ministry. It's a call it a community run, if you want to call it, right? All we need to do is replicate that same principle to get people together. So what you said, if I'm in the government, if I'm the minister, whatever I'm thinking about in the team, I would say, okay, get all the banks in the room, get the technology leaders in the room, get this guy in the room, and saying, look, the costs are very high. We have for a long time not allowed other banks and people to open here because they will kill you. That is also true of telecoms, right? If you look at the amount of money that between Rogers and Bell, and I mean, Rogers took the lead after they had tell us they spend more money to trying to stop Verizon coming in, right?
Yeah.
And if you recall that one, and I'm saying to my buddy over there, saying, why would you not take that money and actually try and say, what can we do to remove duplications and try and bring the cost down? Because there's, I use the word sometimes, but not to be nasty. I would try and say we have normalized incompetency, right? And inefficiency.
Right.
We have done that, and we turn on, and so we don't normally see some of these problems. This type of situation with COVID-19 has exposed a lot of those things. So if you were actually, and you made a very good point, we turn on, and the government says, okay, I'm going to help facilitate. I'm going to give you the land because they own a lot of land, and it doesn't have to be too far. Since you're talking about building smart cities, everybody's involved. Why don't we start building this? At the same time, you have another project going saying, build houses, affordable housing, because young guys can't buy homes these days. It's crazy, right?
Right.
Because it's become very, very expensive. So there are a lot of things tied here. So if they were doing that, if they facilitated that and put some money in, right, and saying, okay, you invest this money, we'll let you write off. And as you make money in this, you got tax holiday for next 10 years, right? So that you can bring other people to bring their investment in here, the data processing, whatever. We did a little bit of that, right? In New Brunswick, when some of the telephone companies, right, move
Mm-hmm.
the customer service there. So, and they therefore had to build a lot of infrastructure. The phenomenal infrastructure does exist in New Brunswick because they had to do it to handle all that. Isn't that a model like that need to be looked at seriously between all these different parties?
Yeah, I think it could. The big problem with that is those communities. You've got so many different players that need to be involved. The developer, the government, the telcos, all that to build that type of community. I have been approached by people from Asia where that's what they do. They build a community. So you've got the residential, you've got the business office, and then you've got your data center within that same park because everybody's feeding off each other at that point. So it kind of makes sense. I think the smart cities is going to be that kind of approach around it. They don't know what it's going to be when it grows up yet. That's the issue, right? I mean, you've got all this data, but what are you doing with that data? That's the issue now. So they think that data is going to drive more businesses, and I think it will. But it's not proven across the board yet on how all that's going to work. And you're still different animals that have. So someone's controlling the land, someone's doing this, and someone's doing that, right? So bringing that community together is never that easy, right? I mean, but it's something that can be tested and proven on a business case. I'm a factual guy, right? So let's show where the rubber meets the road and show the real numbers. I think that'll make a difference.
Right. I think that's true. But here's a problem. And Bob Lane has talked about it because he's involved with smart cities and he's got some very good ideas there. But my view is when I did things in life and whatever I achieved, I was alone too often because all these guys didn't believe it, but I got it, started the thing and people came, right? As they saw. I think in Canada, we've been talking about smart cities for a long time now. I've attended all sorts of meetings. I've spoken at some of these things. And I look back and go, but we're not doing it. And we've put a label of smart cities, but what the heck goes underneath is if we had done any of this, we wouldn't have had the problem with what we're dealing with now with the COVID-19, because we would have had some infrastructure in place. But regardless, I think the problem is, you probably heard this. There's a fork in the road, and the guy keeps running, and he says, have you seen there were about 60, 80 people? Did you see which way they went? And the guy says, why are you asking me that? He said, I need to find them. I'm their leader. The problem is the leader has got no clue or what the heck is going on. They've gone in a different direction. And I think we're seeing that real time now, that the companies are going in a certain direction. And here's why I say that. There are small companies starting to show up, entrepreneurs, good for Canada, Canadian, and they're going to disrupt some of these big boys in a way that they never, ever even thought about it. Because if you think about India and how it made progress 40 years ago, whatever, and got to number one in technology, and now you can see it has all gone. Other places, what was the difference? They had zero, so they said, okay, let's go to the best. There was no conversion involved because they didn't have to think about disrupting the customer because nobody had it.
Right.
They were able to get the best technology and provide them. They even went and got outsourcing from likes of Canada and whatever. China played a different game. Was very smart because they were playing long game. And my apologies, I'll just cut it out here. Sorry about that. So I think the reason I bring it up is the following. When we do those things, right? Exactly as the type of thing you're talking about. Doesn't it mean we need to start something somewhere quickly and get and build? Because I'm talking about progress versus perfection. We seem to be looking for perfection all the time. It's like the project. I give you an example, then you can kind of provide more details. One of the guys working for one of the cities, right, tells me I can't wait to go back to work. I'm bored. I got a big project that's on hold since last September. And I said, what's the project about? Because he was asking for my advice. So he gives me the details. I'm just shaking my head here. Because the budget was approved, he's saying I need to go do this now. I said, but there is no need for that project. Things have changed. We're in a different world now. When you woke up after post-COVID-19, there are many companies that have not realized, and they're going to pay a heavy price if they don't get their act together. A lot of things have changed. Other companies and other countries have realized, and they're playing at it, right? And they're trying to move fast. We are not. And we, like this guy is saying, and I said, why would he do this? He said, if I don't go through with this project, I would not get the money in the future, right? Because it was budgeted for, he didn't spend it, gone. Well, don't we have a problem in the corporate world that this is how we're operating? Or even the government for that matter. Just because it was budgeted doesn't mean you have to spend it if it's not the right thing and the problem has changed. I've had to kill projects in my executive role because nobody else had the courage to do it. And then I realized, why are they doing this? And I realized that if they turn around and say, well, this project is going to fail, it's not working, stop it, we would fire them. Or they get disciplined and they don't get the bonus, so they don't want to admit that there's a problem. So would we not turn around and say, don't try to make it very big thing. Take federal government gives the land, get one or two banks, get a couple of people, get started. And then you start to add people realize we are operating in the world of herd mentality, just like shiny tools. Because two companies bought that, I got to have that tool from IBM or whoever, right? The minute they see that, they will not want to get left behind. They'll get in. But somebody has to make a start, right? And we're not necessarily doing that. How's that going to happen? If you were doing this and you had this thing, what would you do to create that environment? Because you mentioned the right thing. You are like me, you're a doer. I'm a strategic guy, but I will get the thing. I don't want to keep hearing about it. What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, the first point would be to obviously organize in a way that makes sense, that you need to do, like anything, you need to test it, right?
Right.
So you gotta back up a little bit, put the right plan together, look for what I call the sweet spots, right? So, you know, the requirements are, okay, we need some land, right?
Yes.
So the government or whoever puts the land up. The next step is we have to build something there. So there's cost to do that.
Right.
So who's putting in to do that? Is it a developer that we're working with, or is there someone that's a friendly of this whole team? So if you haven't built what I call a community leadership team, I think that's the first thing you got to do. You got to build that where people are going to say, okay, I'm putting my hand up. You know, I'm going to put this in the game. You got the other guy putting his hand up, and you got all the pieces. So you got the puzzle there. Now you got to go and do it. And then it'll be easy to go and make the money, or tweak that. Back to your other point, if it doesn't work this way, you tweak it a little bit that way. But you'll get something that's going to make sense. It's never, I mean, there's a million ways to do anything. We all know that.
Right.
But you take the best practices, you get it out there, and then you have to now get it people to jump on board. I mean, I was working with my son more recently. He's in Laurier, and he's kind of working. We were talking about it earlier. He's got a cybersecurity project that he's working on, and he asked me what my thoughts were, and I said, it's about awareness. It's how do you cybersecurity is, everybody's got passwords. We all do it differently. We all have our ways of remembering them. But I said, there's tools out there to tell you where the problems are, right? So we could use that same analogy and say, okay, we just done 100 ways to Sunday to test this thing. It's bulletproof. It does this. It's Canadian owned. It's got all the moving parts that can compete with anybody in the market, and it's cheaper, right? Because we made it cheaper for the right reasons. And now we've got, not all our eggs in one basket, because you got to duplicate that. You got to have it in different locations. You need that DR plan as well. So I think I answered your question properly, is I think you need to get that consortium sorted out first off, and take the egos out of it. It's not about who's the boss, who's putting more money in, or whatever. You got to get rid of that, because this thing is going to die on the vine if it's not organized at the front end.
It's very interesting what you just said. The couple of things which really are very important here is that you get the people who do the job every day involved in it, right? Which we don't, right? Like I could give you many examples of money we spent, and the big companies, the globally known companies come in, they do the review, they talk to the executive vice president and some senior vice president here or there, but they never talk to the people who do the work, right?
Right.
And we end up with I ran a parallel review like that. And then I had the real problems on my thing, because I went around and talked to 36 people who were, person loading the tape, person, programming, person actually QA, all sorts of, the guy in night shift. And it's simple, as you talk to him saying, if I put you in charge, what would you change? What are the things that frustrate the heck out of you that you think you can't get done? And they would turn around saying, I actually brought it first to make them comfortable. Well, guess what? The people whom we paid a few $1 million didn't have one of the items that I'd come up with, because they talked to the wrong people. And many times we have an outcome in our minds, and we bring in the consultants, I mean, big companies, to say, okay, here's what we are thinking. And those guys will give you exactly what they know you want to hear.
Right.
But if we were to bring in, like what you're saying, which is true, that you use the word community, and that's exactly what I'm thinking about. This is the community of people who are the users, who are the people who do all the work, and saying, what are the challenges that you found? If you had to deal with it, if I was in the supermarket and asking somebody about that same thing, and they would have said, every time the trolley you have to bring it back, it's a hell of a problem because the parking lot is not designed properly, right? Or if they designed something different, people could turn around and simply say, I ordered my grocery, right? And I get a text back saying, okay, it's already paid for. Here's the barcode. It's in Vault 1. So from the outside, I drive up. I don't even have to touch anything. I scan my barcode that send me, the thing opens up. I take my grocery. Nobody touched it. I go home. It closes itself and is ready for the next one. And next one, and you've got multiple things spaced out, so people are not even next to it. Now, to do that, you have to understand, whoever is designing it, that, okay, there is a COVID-19. But isn't it also talking to the people who are doing your work every day and saying, there's no space here, and people are touching each other and they're getting upset, and a lot of people lined up, or whatever. And in the data center, is exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing, in that we don't. It's slightly digressing, but it's really, we used to have at SNS, which everybody knows as Bell Emerges, right? And then went to TELUS. So I used to run, right? And the problem that we ran into there, right, about the division I was, is that they were missing tapes that would be loading for the banks, because, for the credit card data, when you have the data come in, Visa only dials in and picks it up. You can't push the file to Visa. It goes into the Visa device, and Visa will come do all the check, which is why Visa doesn't have the type of problems that others have, right? So what happened was, these guys, there was a problem. I would look at it and go, what the heck is going on here? So I went a couple of times at night, late at night, because I knew when the flight was, and I saw the tape had not been loaded. I didn't say anything because I wanted to see. And they were watching a hockey game and all that. These are good guys. They were not. But they said, okay, we'll load the tape up, and she puts it. The problem is he puts it at 2:05. By this time, the scan is gone. There is no file yet.
Right.
It missed the file. Here's the damage that they never realized. This process goes into a bank to tell them that you use your credit card, you've done the transaction. Guess what? They're running your statement that same night. This transaction never got there. Transaction statement run, transaction comes next day, you got 30 days extra, right?
Yeah.
So somebody lost a lot of money, but they never realized this. And I saw this and I go, what the heck is going on here? That was because I was looking at some problems. I got all of them together in a room. Beer, pizza, this thing, the other. I said, I'm going to tell you how this business works, right? And so this guy said, well, why do you want me? I'm a lowly guy, just load the tape. And I said, you're going to find out. Because we don't want to go at their neck. Started to show them that when you don't load it in time, and you think, it's okay, I just did it 2 minutes later, let me show you the cost attached to that. And they were taken aback. They said, are you trying to tell me that what I do is that critical? I just showed it to you. And then I thought to myself, how many of you guys know credit card business and don't know? I did the same thing at Visa, by the way. And to get the entire staff together saying, you work in this business? Do you really know what happens from end to end? And they didn't know from the time to apply because I've done all that, right? So I said, let me actually show you. And so it was very interesting because people understand their area well, but the impact of what they do to the next guy, they do not know. So after I showed it to them, this guy's in data center saying, good Lord, we never ever miss another tape again, right? And things improved, efficiency improved, because we have a tendency to tell people what to do.
Right.
But we don't tell them why.
It's the same in the data center business, right? The grassroots is very important. So, I grew up that way, doing physical, I've done the wiring, I've done the soldering back in the day, climbing the ladders at Bell. So that is very, very important. And then we get so caught up on the day-to-day management of it. We don't educate the guys that are doing it for the reason why they need to do their job. And we're all worried about if we tell them too much, they're going to want more money, right? So,
right.
It always comes back to that money aspect of it as well, which is a wrong thing to do. But you're right. I mean, if you I'm just going to turn it back to that data center.
Right.
Put those guys that are actually installing, because I rely on the electricians, the mechanical guys that do, and say, hey, I'm going to have the pipes go that way on the paperwork. But if you find a better way to do it, tell me it, and we'll show it on the drawings as built. And I just save the client, $100,000 for an example, right? And it's a better way of doing it for the right reasons, because in paper you don't always see everything. Planning, everything's sometimes over-engineered for the wrong reasons, which costs more money in the long run, and everybody's trying to protect themselves, right?
Yeah.
But I think that your point of having that grassroots as part of that team and educating them what we're trying to do. Right. So not just saying, okay, we're doing X back, just saying do that and don't ask any questions, but no, we're going to do this as a team, and the outcome is going to be, this better data center and better managed data center, and we're going to have the money to manage it properly, not because we're running everything on a shoestring budget for the wrong reason.
That's it. Money should not be. Is doing the right thing has to be. I think this is what you identified are pretty powerful. We'll get you involved in this January thing, because I think we'll have some more, because I think consider this a first part only, because I think there's a lot more that I know you haven't had the chance to go into, because I didn't go there. I just wanted to park the high level thing that getting data centers in Canada and doing collaboration and thinking properly about where the heck are we going long term, making sure smart cities is kind of part of this, so this is part of that, right? Getting communities involved, but more importantly, some of the points, I'm just trying to recap things you said, that collaboration, because no one person can do it because of the cost involved, that the government policies of tax incentives, perhaps even providing land free for telecommunication companies to turn and say, you know what, we're going to help you with infrastructure, right? We'll go low cost, because if this benefits, we'll make a lot of money long term too, which is fine. So everybody's putting money in because they'll get something back. Right. And then But in doing all that, you're bringing jobs back to Canada, not to mention giving jobs to people who are out of job now, right?
Yeah.
And the banks are not going to be opening all the branches. I mean, anybody who thinks is kidding themselves, because you'll see a lot of rationalization going on, just as people are going to turn and say, do I need the expensive offices downtown? And the answer is no, because people are working from home. I know somebody who the company said that, okay, we're probably going to open, the person quit, senior person, saying, no, I'm getting a chance to spend time with my young family, and I was able to do everything. So they had to reconsider and saying, no, okay. Because that decision was not thought through, right? They need to really think that, okay, this applying. Just I tell some of the finance guys, we say, oh, here's a graph for what happened. This stock did. I said, throw it out. You don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, how many people were predicted what's going on in the US right now? The whole place is destabilized. and what is happening right now, also everything. So you're seeing even the power structure change around the world. So there's all sorts of things happening. We don't have all the talent because we're missing that, which means the immigration policies will come in. So although we're talking about data centers, the truth is that there are a lot of other factors are going to play into this if we do it properly, which is what you talked about. So I think we're going to drill down on the next one of, if you were a company A and B, what would you do to build it, right? So we can probably go there, because who better than somebody who built it, which is yourself, right? So I thank you, Bill. This is fantastic. Even if we have touched just the surface, because it's obvious you know your stuff well. And the thing that I hadn't realized, which is the fact that you have got other backgrounds, is helping your thought process. You are a problem solver, right? We need more people like that, right? And we need to drill that down. So that's actually fantastic. I really, truly thank you, Bill. And we will be talking about this. And obviously, we're recording. We'll put it out there, and you can add your comments and 2 cents to that. Well, I'll let you know as I've done that. So perfect.
And I just want to leave these last words, and BAW, better as a whole. So it's one of my trademarks. And there's no fun till 21. That's because of COVID.
Correct. By the way, you mentioned the cybersecurity thing. University of Toronto is launching a new cybersecurity program next week, and it's actually truly fantastic because they call it upskilling. They're covering it very differently in creating problem solvers, as opposed to all the other cyber. I've seen a lot of cybersecurity programs out there. This is completely different because it's really going to the root causes of the thing and the way it's been developed. So you will be hearing more about that. But I give University of Toronto full credit for actually doing that. That's how we'll need to. I'll share with you, and hopefully they'll be putting it out there. So thanks very much again, Bill. I really appreciate that.
Take care.